Okay, so here we are with our little, this is the batch mixer, and this is the ProLogic thing, and we've developed this for using Wonderware. And so what we have here is we've got our system controls, and we just have the selector mode is A position is for a one-time cycle. It fills up once, it empties once, and then it shuts down. B is where we make batch modes, and we can make as many batches as we want. And C is where we just run continuously. Right now, all our buttons are not working because our start stop, because it says you have to have access. So we also have some security on here. And right now we're at guest by default, and that has no system access. So you can't go into any of the menus and configure any of the buttons. They won't work. So if I can go in here and I will log on, and now we'll be able to turn the system on. And this says that I have access to all the panels. So if we go back here, I'm going to put it into the A selector, and this is one cycle mode. So now when I hit start, we'll go back to just starting it up. Now I think for the defaults on this are we fill it up to 100 units, whatever that is, gallons or whatever. And if we look at monitor, we've got the two pumps and the drain pump. The first one runs up to 70, and the other one fills it up the rest of the way. And you can see the switch over there. Now this says 99, but it's really 100 because we logged that value when it actually latches in and it's full. Okay, so it is 100. And right here, just as in the ProLogic, we have the heater and a mixer. And the heater will heat up until it gets up to the reference temperature. And then the mixer runs for an additional time. And I think by default it runs for 4 seconds. Oh, no, this shows 8 seconds. So we're running at 8 seconds, and then it'll shut down, and then it'll start draining. And now, because we're in the one cycle mode, when it finishes draining, the system will shut down. And when it does, we'll put it into the continuous mode so we can run through several things. Now for configuration, if we want to control this, we'll only fill it up to say 66 so we can go through it faster, and we'll put the one pump at 33, so it'll be 33 and 33. Now we entered that, but it's not going to take effect until we cycle through again. And for that we have to put it in our continuous mode. So we're in continuous mode, mode C, and now when we start it up, it'll just keep running continuously in this mode. And if we go to the monitor, now we have configured it so that it's only running up to 66. So the first pump is at 33, the second one will run all the way to 33, and then it'll be totally full. Now we have it such that all these parameters and whatnot, we have them in registers, so we can scale what this tank looks like as full, and it always looks full because we're reading from a register value, not a constant number. Now down here we have some faults, and when they're in red, they're active faults, so the high signal is active right now because we're still at the high level. The ones that are in blue are faults that have cleared away. So now that we're not at the high level, we can just acknowledge that and it clears. And so we'll go through the routine again, and it'll just do that continuously. So what we have is we just have the main thing that just puts us in the right mode and then starts and stops, and that all it does and gives us a little system status. The configuration is where we can change these parameters to suit what we want. We can change the temperature it heats up to, and that's from 70 to 100, so we can change it to 77, and the amount of time, this was at 8 seconds, we'll change it to 11 seconds. Now again, when we hit enter, what that does is that puts it in a holding register. So those parameters don't take effect. We're still heating up to 89 degrees. Those will not take effect until we cycle all the way off. And then, and here it was just at 8 seconds again. So those parameters won't take effect until we cycle through. Now when we go down, all the way down to the bottom, and we can also maybe configure it to, instead of 66, we'll put it at 77. And again, so long as we put those parameters in before it finishes the cycle, when it goes through the next cycle, it'll have our new parameters in there. So now it's going to fill up to 77, and then over here for our temperature, it's also going to heat up to 77 because that's what we had programmed it to. So now for this one, it's still going to go to 33 on the first pump, and then it's going to fill up to 77. And again, we won't see the total fill amount until it actually makes that fill amount. And so we're up to 77, and then we're full. Now here it's going to heat up for 77 seconds. And what do we say for the run time? So now we're going to run after we heat up to 11 seconds. So when it gets to 77 temperature, and we're at 75 right now, heater will turn off and this will run for an additional 11 seconds. And that's what it did. Now, that'll keep running and that'll be fine. But what we have in here is we have our simple program, and this is just a regular Allen Bradley program, but this is what does all the parameters, and we have the regular input output, but then we also have the simulation function, and this takes care of all the things that the LogixPro would have. So for instance, when we turn on the pump, we actually have to send a signal for the flow meter, and this is what does the flow meter timing. Then we have the same flow meter for the drain pump. We have this temperature in bit that when we get to the proper temperature, it will set the temperature input level. So we have to set all the inputs from the ProLogic system so that they'll create the same functions in this program. We also have a lot more parameters in here that we set. We have the initial stuff on the first pass through. But then because we're setting things from the configuration register, we move everything into a pending register. So when we hit enter, it moves into a pending register. But then it stays in the pending register until it actually sees the end of cycle pulse or a start pulse to run a new sequence. And that's when it moves it from the pending register into the active working register. So the simulation and what we're doing with setting up parameters is pretty important. And then we have some hour meter functions that is basically for our runtime. And this has runtime of the system. And then we also have something down here which is just a little, it's a 10-minute strobe, so we're clocking data in at 10-minute intervals. That's another feature that we added to the program from the original LogixPro. And then we've also added some alarm systems to our alarms. So if we go back to our system, and up here we'll turn it on to run it, and we're still going to be in the same mode that we were because the Allen Bradley stuff never turned off. We're just turning off the Wonderware for a second to take a look at it. So it's still running through its thing. Some of the other stuff, well, we have the configuration, and one of these, you can put it up to 350 gallons, and we might, let's run this one up to about 222, so it'll take a while. And then for the number one fill, we'll fill that up to, I don't know, say 110, and then the other one can go the other 112. And enter. Now again, right now it's just setting in that holding register until it empties. And now it's updated that register, so now we should be going all the way up to 222. Some of the additional panels we have is we were talking about that hour meter structure. And here is where we have the system operational hours. And had it running for a while. We also have system alarms. We have some soft alarms and critical alarms. These critical alarms will shut the system off. These soft alarms are every time through we'll hit a low, high level, low level. These mismatch things, originally we said that those will occur, like here, we're saying we're going up to 222 gallons. And we said pump number 1 had to be 110. Now, for some reason, it only had 109 or 111. That would show up on the alarm system as a mismatch on pump 1. And if the tank didn't fill up to 222, if it filled up to 220, that would be a mismatch for that. That does not occur very often. I don't even think I've ever seen it. So here, we're at 222, and now it's going through its heating up cycle and its mixing cycle. So we've got the configuration that we can change our parameters. We've got the runtime, we've got our system alarms, and now we're sitting at high tank level. But that doesn't show as a system level alarm because that's just the soft alarm. It's going to go away as soon as it's done mixing. And you can see the status of everything. Now it's at temperature, the mixer heater is on, and now that goes off and we start draining the tank. And the security is where we have access, and this tells us what panels you have access to. And it works on a level indicator, so operators only have access level to a level of 50, a technician to 100, and then full access for the engineering whatever is like 255. Now they also have this, we put in this pretty cool thing for recipes, and what we had is we have these recipes that we made, and you can create your own by just typing in here and putting in what quantities you want. But for simplification, what we can do is we can have some existing ones, and so our ones that we have right now, we're doing Witch's Brew was the last one that we put in there, but we can, and it'll put in different parameters, and so we can, this one will be T, and it'll fill to 110 with pump 1 being 77. We can heat it and have these different time intervals. So next time around we should load up to 110, and pump 1 is going to fill up to 77, and the temperature will be 88, and the mixing after it reaches temperature will be 10 seconds. So we'll just wait around for that. And we've also had this running for a while, that in the hour meter, when we showed the that 10-minute interval, what we do is we have a way we can log data at 10-minute intervals just to take a look at how the system is running in general. And what that does is it sends all the data to an SQL server. And what we have it set up so it'll log data, and after we get through this cycle and verify that we are doing our actual tea, our batch of tea, what we can do is take a look at that, and then we can also put it into the batch mode and see how that works. Okay, so we're going to show off the batch mode, and right now what we've got it in the 1 cycle mode, so when it finishes doing what it's doing here, and now it's draining, when it gets to the end there, it'll go and it'll stop and it'll shut down, and then we'll put in the configuration for the batch mode. And batch mode is where we can make any number of batches, and it'll do whatever it's configured to do. But if we only want a dozen batches, we can run it so it'll do a dozen of those, and that might be typical of what you do in some type of industrial operation. We want a production run of X number of batches. So we finished this operational 1 cycle, and so the system is off. We can go in here, and we need to go to the main menu, and this says 1 cycle mode. When we put in batch mode is B, it kind of gives us not this warning but this attention, and then it has this that for batch mode you must first configure how many batches you want on the configuration screen. Now all this is invisible because we make it visible only when we're in B mode. So if we go into the configuration, and again this batch count and maximum batches only appears when we're in the batch mode, and this says again configure the number of cycles we want. So we'll go in here, and just for time concerns we'll just make it 2 batches, and here we'll make it so we can show it pretty quickly. We'll do 66 as the fill, and we'll just, I don't know, 46 is what we're going to put in there. So we're going to make 2 batches. It'll be 46 and a total of 66, and that'll be for our batch mode. So that is entered. And we go back here. We need to, our system's still off, and now we'll start it up. And now we're in batch mode. And if we go to our monitor system, again, these only show the highlights when we get to the fixed amount. So at 46 it should switch from pump 1 to pump 2, then it'll go up to 66. And it'll go through the heater and the mixer cycles that we had set previously. And then when it drains, the batch count should go from 0 to 1 because we've made 1 batch. Then we do it a second time. We'll go through and then we'll finish, and when we finish, the system will shut off again. That's the important thing. You know, we've got 3 different variations. We've got the one time through that just makes 1 batch. Then we have batch mode where we can make any number of batches we want. Well, not any number. We kind of have a limit, but it's arbitrary of 20. And then we have the continuous cycle mode, which is the C mode for continuous. And well, there we just finished the 1 batch, so we've got a count of 1. We'll go and do it again, and when we're finished with that, we'll get a count of 2, and then we'll shut the system off, and then we'll be done with the batch mode. And from there you can put in any mode you want. And so this has all the functionality that's in that LogixPro and a bit more. And the bit more is where we can configure different things. We also have the the recipes where we can just make whatever we want, and we can actually invent or new concoctions on the fly, and we can put in whatever we need at a certain time. So that has pretty good functionality, and we'll just let it go to the end here. When it drains all the way down, our count should go to 2, our system will shut off, and then we are done. So count is 2, system is off, we're finished with the batch mode. And if we go to the main program, we can put it back into the continuous mode, we can start it up. Now it's going to continuous mode. It'll just keep going on and on for as long as is required. So if we look at this data logging, right here is the SQL Server stuff. We can go into that manager and we can take a look at the data logging that we've done. And again, we're taking a look at it. We have to connect up, and this is all set up beforehand. If we look in our database, and we have a bunch of different, we've got a barcode routine, this batch mixer, we've got the dual compressor, we've got another project. But we want to look at the batch mixer, and we can refresh it. And what we do is we go into tables. And on these tables we've got 2. We've got 10-minute update, and then we've got an end of cycle. And so 10-minute update, we'll take a look at the first, well, it's not going to be 1,000 rows, it might be a couple dozen. But what we should be doing, and what we should see, is we should see timestamps every 5 minutes. And so here we had a little glitch when we started up, but here we start up. And you can see at 5 minutes, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 05, and it keeps going in that fashion. And then if we look at this, we can see what temperatures we're running. Here is where we actually changed the temperature so that we'd be set at 77 degrees, and then here is where we had the default of 8 seconds, and then here's where we put in the last 11 seconds. So this last one was where we changed the recipe to T, and the other ones where we just had it running at default. And then some of these values for these are just telling if the pumps were on or off, and because it's just at 10-minute intervals, it's kind of random, and this tells us what the mode was in. Here, when it said 0, is where the system was actually in the off position. And if we look at the end of cycle data, it'll be the same information, except except that because every cycle happens so often, we've got a lot more data. And here, you know, it tells you what the pump filling for each of them was. Here's where we're at 33 and we were filling up to 66. Here's where we filled up to the 222. And then here's where we were filling up that last one for the T, where it was just filled up to 110. So, you know, we can clock the data. This is pretty cool. So here we can put it back into our standard 100 fill amount. Now we have to be careful that we don't try to, there should be an error if we try to have this number be higher than this number, but let's put this one up to 99. So we're going to put 99 gallons of 100 gallons right on pump number 1. So what we should see, and we can also change. Now we'll put that in the holding register, and nothing's going to happen until it fully drains. And we can go here, we'll put, since we have that up to 99, we'll put the temperature up to 99. And we'll only, after it reaches that temperature, we'll only put it on for 3 seconds. So we're going to have a bunch of 99s, and we'll put that in the system. And we'll go back to our monitor and let this one finish out its routine, and then we can watch what happens when we go on the new one. And so I really like this stuff. You know, if you put in these additional features, some of them like the alarms and the security and the runtime are really easy to put in, but those demonstrate some pretty useful functions that people may want. The configuration, as well as the alarms, when you put those in, those really help out your skills, because you have to use a lot of registers to make them work, and it's pretty helpful and lets you develop more complicated programs, but you have to think about how you want to develop them. So I think actually what happens is you become a much better developer of the programs when you use this. Now, some of the recipes, that's a little bit difficult, and you got to know a little bit of Visual Basic to get that working, because some of that is done with scripting. And the same is for the SQL server. I'm not even sure how much access we have to that type of stuff, but that's a little more complicated too. That's kind of in depth, but up to 100. Pump 1 is going to go all the way to 99, and then pump 2 is only going to have a single gallon or whatever unit we are operating off of, and then we'll be finished. And you can see already that our set point is for the temperature is already set to 99, and when it finally reaches that 99, and again, this heater function and this mixer function are all done in the simulation software that's part of this. This will be done in the ProLogic stuff, but this is all done in the simulator. And that simulator, and it's only on for 3 more seconds, simulator is really good stuff for something else that enhance the programming capabilities. And if we go into security, you have the log on, log off. If I just log off here, it automatically goes to guest access, and then we have no system access, which when we go here, and you might want to use that. So if we go here, and if we're walking away from the system, you can't even turn the system off if you're in guest access. So what we probably should do is log on again and get to a point where we can shut the system down. And actually, if we want to shut it down, what we can do is we can put it in mode A, and this is the 1 cycle mode. So when it finishes this mode, and right now, even though it doesn't show it because this is the main page, it shows you that you're in the mixer heater mode of operation. When it gets to temperature, it'll say at temperature, and then it'll start draining. and you'll be able to see it draining through here. And you can see that our mixer's off, and now we're starting to drain. If we go back to the main menu, it says we're at temperature, so we've reached temperature, and now we're starting to drain down. And because we've changed the mode to 1 cycle, when it comes down and it's finished and it's empty, we should see system off, and that'll be the end of this little video. And let's see if it does happen that way. So we're about empty, and sure enough, system off. And that's the end of the video on the Wonderware for the batch mixer.